Karen Whitmore stood on her manicured lawn at 7:03 am, clipboard in hand, watching in absolute horror as three teenagers she'd never seen before cannonballed into the Hendersons' pristine backyard pool. The splash was so enormous it soaked her HOA violation notice through the chain-link fence. "Excuse me," she shrieked, her voice cracking like a whip across the morning air. The teenagers ignored her completely, too busy laughing and splashing to notice the 52-year-old woman frantically waving official documentation at them. What made it worse, so much worse, was that Karen had specifically told Mrs. Henderson just last Tuesday that pool parties required 48 hours written notice to the HOA board. And here these strangers were treating Willowbrook Estates like some kind of public water park. Karen's phone buzzed, a text from her neighbor Janet. "Did you see Karen actually invited random people to use the Henderson pool? She's lost it." "What?" Karen squinted at her phone, then back at the pool. One of the teenagers was now doing backflips off the diving board, a clear violation of Safety Protocol 14B, but invited them. That was impossible. She would never. Her blood ran cold. Yesterday, in her fury over the Hendersons' unlawful garden gnome placement, she'd posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, "Anyone else tired of the Hendersons acting like they owned this place? Feel free to use their pool anytime. They clearly don't respect our community rules anyway." She'd meant it sarcastically, obviously, but teenagers apparently didn't understand sarcasm. "Oh no, oh no, oh no," Karen muttered, speed dialing the HOA emergency line. "This is Karen Whitmore, board member 4A. We have an unauthorized pool situation developing at 1247 Maple Drive. Ma'am, our records show you authorized recreational swimming for non-residents via social media at 3:47 p.m. yesterday." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. I didn't mean. It was sarcasm. Sarcasm isn't recognized in HOA communications, ma'am. You'll need to file a formal retraction in triplicate. By the time Karen hung up, 2 more carloads of teenagers had arrived. Word was spreading through social media faster than gossip at a church potluck. Her perfectly planned Tuesday morning had devolved into chaos, and worse, it was technically her fault. Mrs. Henderson emerged from her back door in a bathrobe, took one look at the pool party, and fixed Karen with a stare that could melt steel. "Karen Whitmore," she called across the fence, her voice deadly calm, "we need to talk." Karen clutched her clipboard tighter. She'd been on the HOA board for 6 years, had filed 247 violations, and had never, not once, been on the receiving end of community drama. Now she was about to find out exactly what it felt like to be the problem neighbor. The teenagers kept splashing, oblivious to the suburban warfare brewing around them. Karen's perfectly ordered world was cracking at the seams, and she had no idea how much worse it was about to get. 2 hours later, Karen sat in her pristine living room, staring at the official HOA violation notice that had just been hand-delivered to her door. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had helped design these very forms. Violation Code 15C, unauthorized invitation of non-residents to private community amenities. Fine, $1,000. Repeat offense penalty, $2,500. Her hands trembled as she read it twice, 3 times. The signature at the bottom belonged to Harold Morrison, the HOA president who'd been looking for an excuse to knock her down a peg ever since she'd reported his wife for hanging laundry on a Sunday. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she saw Mrs. Henderson, still in that bathrobe, holding what appeared to be a very thick folder. "Beverly," Karen opened the door with her practiced HOA smile. "I can explain everything. Can you?" Beverly Henderson pushed past her into the foyer. "Because I've got 17 years of violation notices here, Karen. 17 years of you measuring my grass with a ruler, timing my garbage pickup, and photographing my Christmas decorations." Karen's smile faltered. "Those were legitimate violations. My garden gnome was 3 inches too tall." Beverly's voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. 3 inches, Karen. You cost me $500 for 3 inches. The folder hit Karen's coffee table with a satisfying thud. Inside were photocopies of every violation Karen had ever filed in Willowbrook Estates. Beverly had been busy. Here's what's going to happen, Beverly continued, settling into Karen's favorite chair like she owned it. You're going to withdraw from the HOA board today, or I'm posting every single one of these violations online, along with photos of you measuring my gnome with a tape measure at 6 a.m. Karen's throat went dry. You can't make me resign. Watch me. Beverly pulled out her phone and began typing. Let's see. HOA board member Karen Whitmore, caught measuring neighbors' garden decorations at dawn, later accidentally invites strangers to use residence pool. Hashtag HOA Karen. Hashtag Willowbrook drama. Stop. Karen lunged for the phone, but Beverly was faster. Resignation letter. Now, or this goes viral in about 30 seconds. Karen had never felt so small. All those years of wielding rule books and clipboards, of being the neighborhood's unofficial police force, and now she was being blackmailed by a woman in a bathrobe. She sat down at her computer and began typing her resignation with shaking fingers. Every word felt like swallowing glass. There, she said finally, hitting print. Are you happy? Beverly smiled for the first time in 17 years. Ecstatic, but Karen, the fine stands. $1,000. And if you ever file another frivolous violation in this neighborhood. She left the threat hanging in the air, gathered her folder, and headed for the door. Beverly, wait. Karen's voice was barely a whisper. What happens now? Beverly paused in the doorway. Now you get to find out what it's like to be just another neighbor instead of the neighborhood dictator. Might do you some good. After Beverly left, Karen stood in her silent house, surrounded by 17 years of HOA documentation and filing systems. Outside, she could still hear teenagers laughing in the Henderson pool. For the first time in decades, Karen Whitmore had no idea what came next, and somewhere in the pit of her stomach, beneath all the humiliation and anger, was something she hadn't felt in years. Relief.